So let's start by reciting Namo Tassa 3 times together. Namo Tassa Bhagavato
Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa.
Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Homage to the sublime, the victorious, the totally self-enlightened one. We are going to start from the very beginning, first part of the Abhidhamma, about the two kinds of truth and reality. So just to refresh our memory. And I will go through briefly and quickly. So if you have any questions and you want to clarify something, just stop me, okay? All right, so now remember that when we talk about reality and truth, these two words, they are interchangeable when we use these two words. So what do we mean by truth or reality here? In the Abhidhamma, when we talk about reality or truth, we mean something, whether it is true in the conventional sense or in the ultimate sense. So it can be a concept, ultimate sense, in conventional sense, or it can be in the ultimate sense as well. Okay, so in Pali, this is called the Paramata Satcha, ultimate reality. Paramata means ultimate, and Satcha means truth. So to remind ourselves of what characteristic or what is meant by ultimate truth, we have a few points here. The first one is that whatever is an ultimate truth, its intrinsic nature and characteristic never change. For example, let's say fire. So the intrinsic nature of fire is always hot. So it never changes, but it does not mean that the fire itself does not change, but it means that the intrinsic nature of or characteristic of that ultimate truth, it stays the same. Okay, so that's one of the characteristics of ultimate truth. And the other one is something which is irreducible. For example, sorry, I think maybe someone's microphone is on. If we can just, let me see us. Yeah. Sorry, okay, I think it's okay now. All right, so what we call ourselves as human, but actually what are we? We are nama and rupa, right? So mind and matter. So when we further reduce what we call human, we will reduce it into chitta, chittasika, and rupa. Then chitta, chittasika, and rupa itself cannot be further reduced. So therefore, something that is not that is irreducible anymore, you cannot further separate them, is also a characteristic of ultimate reality. Okay, and then another thing is that ultimate reality can be experienced by oneself. For example, dosa, anger, we can experience by oneself. We know it, we all have experienced. And loving kindness, in the same way, was something we can experience. And another characteristic of ultimate truth is that it arises, it exists, and then it passes away, except for Nibana. That we will get to that later. But then this is also another characteristic of ultimate reality. So in short, in summary, the characteristic of ultimate reality or ultimate truth, what can be called ultimate truth or reality, is something that is intrinsic nature and characteristic never changed, is irreducible, can be experienced by oneself, and it arises, exists, and passes away. Except Nibana. So that's the characteristic of Paramata Satcha, right? Ultimate truth or reality. Okay, so we have conventional truth and we have ultimate truth. Conventional truth is called Sammuti Satcha, and ultimate truth, Paramata Satcha. Now, talking about Sammuti Satcha, conventional truth, it is sometimes also called Panyati, which is concept. And what is a concept? So a concept can be of many different kinds. In later chapter in Abhidhamma, there is actually one section that talks about Panyati. But here, just briefly, let's remember that we have previously talked about Nama Panyati, which is a name concept. And what is a name concept? Name concept is something that makes some other things known. So that's a name, right? So for example, the word car is something that makes a thing concept known. So the object, Atta Paññāti is the thing concept, the object which is represented by these names. So here we have two types of concept. We have Nama Paññāti, name concept, and Atta Paññāti, thing concept. Okay. Now, for name concept, name can refer to not only another concept, which is like the object, right? But it can also refer to ultimate reality. It can also refer to Paramata Satcha. For example, the mental ingredient of aversion, dosa cetasika itself is an ultimate reality. But the name dosa is the name concept that we give to this ultimate reality, right? So those are also called, any kind of names are also called Nama Paññāti. In this case, like dosa. So the interesting thing about Nama Paññāti is it can refer to thing concept, another thing which is still a concept, or it can also refer to ultimate reality, Paramata Satcha. Okay, so then we have gone through two kinds of reality. We have ultimate reality and we have conventional reality, something which is true conventionally, when a big group of people all agree that let's call this a car. So like those kind of conventional reality. Okay, so in Abhidhamma, most of the time we deal with the ultimate realities. And it is taught that there are four kinds of ultimate realities, which are Chitta, Cetasika, Rupa, and Nibana. Okay, until here, everyone okay? Yes? All right, okay. So actually all of these things we have already talked about before, but just we're going through again. So if you have any questions, just anytime, let me know. All right, so let's go to the first Chitta, the first ultimate reality, Chitta and Cittasika. So we know that Chitta and Cittasika, they always arise together, but in order to, because they have, although they arise together, they have different characteristics and they have different functions as well. So let's separate them when we, that's why we separate them when we study them, but we have to remember they always arise together, exist together, and it passes away together. Okay, so let's just first take unit of consciousness, Chitta, and first. So Chitta, what is Chitta? Chitta is most of the time translated as consciousness. And here, why do we put unit of consciousness? Because we want to emphasize that consciousness is not something that is always there and it does not change. But instead, it is something that arises, exists, and then it passes away, and another Chitta arises, exists, and passes away. So it's like those atoms or body. What is the smallest unit in the body that we usually say? Well, in Abhidhamma it's rupa, but in science usually what do we say? Like atom or what is it? Like cell, or I don't know. Anyway, so like those, they arises, exist, and then passes away, and it keeps changing, right? So if the body is in this way, then the mind also is in the same way. Now, the characteristic of Chitta is the bare cognition or the knowing of an object. So what does Chitta do? Then Chitta, it only takes the object, and it is the cognition of the object. So that is what Chitta does. So it is always, because of that, it must always arise with taking something as an object, because it is the knowing, so it must always know something for it to arise. Okay, so sometimes the objects can be very obvious, and sometimes the object can be not very vivid also, but Chitta must always take an object. Now, we have 6 kinds of objects. Very obviously, the 5 sense objects that we all know, and then we have the Dhamma objects as well. Okay, so for these 6 senses, we have 6 kinds of consciousness. We have eye consciousness, ear, nose, tongue, body consciousness. Taking its respective object, a visible object, sound, a smell, taste, a tangible object, and all other kinds of objects are being taken by the mind. Okay, so we have 6 kinds of consciousness, taking 6 types of different consciousness. 6 types of different objects. Okay, so sometimes even when we are in deep sleep and all the time, chitta always arises. It never stops. Usually in very special cases, there are some cases that it does stop for some time, but those special cases we will study in later chapters. Okay, so even when we are in deep sleep, or sometimes even when we say that a person is unconscious, but still consciousness, chitta still arising and passing, or arising and arising and passing, arising and passing in this person. Okay, so therefore, sometimes we say that we have to remember that when we use the English translation words, we have to be careful to understand that this English word has a broader meaning than how we understand this word in English. For example, chitta, translated as consciousness. So that consciousness is a little bit different from the how we usually say we are conscious or not conscious. Yeah. Okay, so briefly, that's about chitta. Then we have Cettasika, the mental factors or concomitants, or sometimes called ingredients. So chitta is a synonym with chitta. And those that depends on chitta for their arising are called Cettasikas. So chitta and Cettasika, they are interdependent functionally. So they always arise together, although they have a different characteristic, and then they have a different function, but they work together. So they must always arise together, exist together, and pass away together. So which type of Cettasika arise with which type of chitta is the content that we are going after we studied all types of chitta and all types of Cettasika, right? Their combination. So today we will also mention a little bit about that later on. Okay, so that's Cettasika. I think it's all okay here without any problem. Then we have another ultimate reality, which is rupa, metta. So metta is defined as that which changes when come into contact with adverse conditions such as cold, heat, hunger, thirst, insect bites, etc. So we can easily see this with let's say in the case of water, with different temperature, cold and heat, it changes its form, yeah. Or even our human body with insect bites, then rupa changes, yeah. Okay. So those are called rupa, metta. And rupa are divided into 2 groups. It can be internal and it can be external. So there are both internal rupas exist and also external rupas. Okay, and rupa does not have the ability to cognize everything. So it does not take object. Now chitta takes object. But rupa cannot take object because it does not have the ability to cognize or to know. So it itself is actually can be known by the mind. Yeah, so it is also a type of object itself. Now, in any living being, chitta, Cettasika, and rupa arise in any living being. But in external things, or non-living things, that only rupa is there. So there is no chitta in non-living beings. Okay, so in the Abhidhamma, there are 28 types of material property that is being taught. So all these 26 types, and we are going to look at them in chapter 6. So they are coming. 28 types. Yeah, 28 types. Yeah, 28 types of material property. Okay, so let's go to the last ultimate reality, Nibana, in Nirvana in Sanskrit. So this word ni plus vana, grammatically, this V here, when it combines with the prefix ni, it becomes BB in Pali. So therefore it's written as Nibana. So ni actually means departure and vana means craving. So Nibana is actually defined as the departure from craving, the extinction of desire, as well as all other types of defilements like ill will and delusion and so on. So that is what is called Nibana, without craving anymore, departure from all kinds of mental defilements. Okay, so that's the definition of Nibana. And Nibana is also described as the liberation or freedom from all kinds of suffering. It is a state that is beyond mind and matter, and it is unconditioned. Okay. Later, in a later chapter, also we will talk more about Nibana. But here is just a brief revision of the 4 ultimate realities. Up to here, is everyone okay? Yeah, okay. All right. Okay, so let's go to another part, the classification of Cheetahs according to planes. Okay, so now we are going to do a revision about all types of Cheetahs that we have studied. And in big division, they are divided into 4 groups, the Kamawachara, Rupavachara, Arupavachara, and Lokuttara. Okay, so this is a classification according to planes. There are different kinds of classification as well, but now we are looking at this one according to planes. So let's see the first one, Kamawachara, Cheetahs with characteristic of the central plane. Then we have Rupavachara, Cheetahs related to jhana that takes concept based on metta as object of meditation. Then we have Arupavachara, the Cheetahs. So those are the types of Cheetahs related to jhana that takes non-material qualities as object of meditation. Then we have Lokuttarachitas, so Cheetahs that takes Nibana as object. Okay, so now we have this 4 group. So in the first group, these Kamawacharachitas are those Cheetahs that mostly have to do with the senses. And then it arises more frequently in the sensual realm. So therefore, they are called the Kamawacharachitas. Yeah. So last week, Sanda was asking what is the meaning of vachara, right? Awachara. Now, awachara is like the frequenting or the moving in, like arising frequently in those planes. So Kamawachara are those that arise mainly in the Kama planes. Now, we have already taken a brief look previously about the 31 plane of existence. And we have 4 lower planes. And then we have 1 human plane, 6 deva plane, 16 fine material plane, and 4 non-material plane, right? So the 4 lower planes and 1 human realm and the 6 deva realms are called the Kamawachara, the sense sphere here. So those Cheetahs that arise frequently in this area, I mean in these different planes, are those that are called the Kamawacharachitas. Okay, now the Kamawachara planes, the sense sphere plane, the 4 lower realm is also called the Kama Dugati. Kama means sense, senses. So du here means it comes like dukkha, the du, that is an unhappy. Gati is a destination or existence. So Kama Dugati is the sense sphere unhappy existence. So they are the 4 lower realms. And then we have the human realm and the deva realms are called the Kama Sugati. So su here like sukha, or the happy existence. So it is still in the sense sphere, but it is a happy existence. It's a better life. So it's called Kama Sugati. So this is these 4 lower realms, human and deva planes are all called Kamawachara. So Cheetahs that mostly arise in these planes are called the Kamawacharachitas. Now, in Rupavachara, Rupavachara, actually it means the 16 fine material planes, yeah. But the Rupavachara Chitta does not only arise in the Rupavachara realms, obviously, because when a person, let's say a human being, when he meditates and he gets jhana, gets Rupa jhana, so it is possible also in the human world. But, or Deva, if he or she meditates, it is also possible, but it is called the Rupavacharachitas because it arises more frequently in this plane, in the 16 fine material planes. So therefore, this group of chitta, more refined chittas, are called the Rupavacharachitas. In the same way, for the Arupavacharachitas, they arise most frequently in the 4 non-material planes, and also possible for other planes as well, but most frequently here, therefore they are called the Arupavacharachitas. Okay, until here, all good? Yeah, okay. All right, so these are the 4 groups of chittas according to plane: Kamawacharachitas and Rupavacharachitas, Arupavacharachitas, and Lokutarachitas. Okay, so when we first studied about this different classification, first we looked at the Kamawacharachitas first. So now let's take a look briefly at the Kamawacharachitas. So chittas with the characteristic of the sensual realm. So kama means sensual pleasure, and awachara means moving in or frequenting, or the plane. So these chittas are usually those chittas that are related to the senses, right? So eye, ear, nose, tongue, touch, and also, of course, the mind, taking different kinds of sensual objects also, yeah? Okay, so these are the chittas actually that we are most familiar with and that mostly all the time arises in us. So for example, when we see something and think about something that we have seen, and we have heard, we smell, tasting, and all these kind of chittas. Now in this group, Kamawachara Chitta, it is further divided into Akusala Chittas, unwholesome consciousness, Ahetuka Chittas, ruthless consciousness, and Sovana Chittas, beautiful consciousness. So there are 3 groups under the sense chittas with the characteristic of the sense realm or sense plane. Yeah. Okay. So before we go into the Akusala Chitta, the first group, we would like to remember about the 6 roots, which is important. Okay, so there are altogether 6 roots. 3 of them are wholesome and 3 of them are beautiful. So these unwholesome roots are lobha, greed or attachment, dosa, aversion, and moha, delusion or ignorance. So these 3 are called the 3 unwholesome roots. And on the other side, we also have 3 just the opposite of them, like the alobha, the non-attachment or generosity, alobha, the good root, a beautiful root, and adosa, loving kindness, and amoha, wisdom. So here this in this case, in the Pali, is the negation of. So the non-greed, non-aversion, and non-delusion, no? We can also say. So, but in a positive term, is so generosity, loving kindness, and wisdom. So these are the 6 roots. So this is very important. And also in later chapters, we have also one section that we will talk more about these roots. Okay. Until here, all good? Yeah, memory coming back? Yes? Okay. All right. Okay, so Kamawacharachitas, the Akusala Chittas, okay. First, we will look at the Akusala Chittas, which are associated with the 3 unwholesome roots. And later on, we will also do a revision of the Sovana Chittas, that those are the beautiful consciousness with the 3 beautiful roots, as well as those Ahetuka Chittas that does not associate with any kind of roots. So therefore they are called the rootless consciousness. So root in Pali is called hetu. So here hetu means no roots, no? So rootless consciousness. So there are these 3 groups here. Okay, so in chapter 1, we have also briefly talked about how do we define what is kusala and what is akusala, no? When we talk about wholesome and unwholesome. Okay, so remember we have 3 types of actions in the Buddha's teaching. We have the bodily action, verbal action, and mental action. So whatever actions that bring us to more wisdom, let's say imagine we have a graphic of a graph of our human actions, and then on one end we have wisdom, and on the other hand we have ignorance and craving here. So imagine all those actions that we do that bring us more and closer to wisdom and to the development of wholesome qualities are those that are called kusala, wholesome. And those that bring us closer and closer each time to more ignorance and more craving and more defilements, and those are called akusala, unwholesome. So in general, we can define kusala and akusala in this way. Okay, now in simple form, all the Buddha's teaching are directly specifically specified to overcome and the to the overcoming and the destruction of ignorance and craving. So therefore, kusala, right? So and how do we develop and how do we destroy ignorance and craving? By the training of sila, samadhi, and panya. Yeah, so through morality, stability of the mind, and wisdom. So all these practice that strive away from and ultimately destroy ignorance and craving, and at the same time approach nearer and nearer to the acquiring of wisdom is what is called kusala. So all kusala always give good result and give good vipaka. No, well, later on we will also revise these different groups of cittas according to their function. So kusala always give good result. And on the other hand, akusala are those actions that not only does not strive from getting away from ignorance and craving, but drag us every time more and more sinking into more craving and more defilements and more ignorance, are those that are called akusala. Okay, so Akusarachitas, there are, talking about the unwholesome cittas, there are 12 kinds divided into 3 groups, which is Lobhamūla, rooted in greed, rooted in ignorance or delusion, and rooted in dosa. Now let's look at the first group, Lobhamūla citta. So greed-rooted consciousness. Now, for greed-rooted consciousness, what does that mean? When does this kind of citta arise? So this kind of greed-rooted consciousness arises whenever an action is performed with lobha. So any kind of action, bodily, mentally, or verbally, any kind of these 3 actions that are performed with greed is called well, in this time when we are performing this kind of action, then greed-rooted consciousness arises in the mind. Now here action actually in actually this Pali word kama literally means action. Excuse me, let's just get some water. So what is kama? Kama means when we do something, this is an active act, like an action. So when we plant something, that action that is kama. So kama is like planting seeds. When we do unwholesome deeds, then we plant an unwholesome causes, right? And later on, when conditions arises, the result, unwholesome result will arise. So akusala cittas are actually, they actually accumulate karma. They accumulate, in this case, unwholesome karma, right? So karma literally means action. And so we understand that whenever we see any kusala chitta or akusala chitta, we remember that they are active. They are not the result of something. Instead, they are causes. They are making future results. Okay. All right. So for greed-rooted consciousness, Lobhamūla chitta, we have 4 aspects to it. The first one is it must always arise together with greed, attachment, obviously, lobha. And then there is another element, which is Vedana, mental feeling. So Vedana is a Cetasika that arises with all kinds of chitta. So whenever a chitta arises, Vedana must always arise together. Then we have wrong view, with or without wrong view, Ditti. Then it can be prompted or unprompted. Okay, so now remember, lobha, when we talk about lobha, the range is really big. So it can be very subtle or it can be very gross. So it can be like really just a little bit of liking, a fondness, a preference, or wishing, a greed or something. It's like really like a little bit. Or it can go until like a very gross form, like self-indulgence, attachment, and lust, and seduction, the obsession, the covetousness. So from all this range, whether it is small or whether it is gross, it is all included in lobha. So any kind of just a little bit of liking or a very gross form of obsession during these moments, then Lobhamūla chitta arise in a different degree, but lobha is still there. Okay, so those Vedana that are associated with Lobhamūla chitta, let's take a look. When we talked about Vedana previously, we have learned that we have 3 kinds of Vedana. Now, somanasa, mental pleasure. So here, since we're doing a revision, so it will be good. I know the content, you might already be familiar with it, or you may already know about it. So this is the 2nd time or 3rd time, or even more times that we have heard about this. So it is good that we try to remember a little bit of those Pali words because this, for example, Vedana, mental feeling, it comes up again and again and again. So since we're already familiar with the content, so it will be good we also try to strengthen our memory of a little bit of these Pali words, because we will be using them again and again. So first, mental pleasure is called somanasa. Mana is actually also synonym of chitta, mind. So it's actually a little bit like English, no, mind and mana. So, well, I don't know, but yeah, chitta, mana, also vijnana, all these refer to consciousness. So here is like the happiness. So manasa is the mental pleasure. Then on the other hand, we have domanasa, the displeasure or mental pain. And we have another Vedana, which is the upekkha, the mental neutrality. Okay, so 3 types of Vedana. Now we are talking about Lobhamūla chitta. So Lobhamūla chitta associate with 2 of them, the somanasa or upekkha. Now before we go in there, we'll just another reminder that Vedana, this Pali word, should not include the alternative usage frequently included in English as referring to aspects of emotions, sentiments, affection, sympathy, or tenderness, like that. Because if we see the English translation feeling, then we have an idea about what feeling is, right? So maybe it's connected to emotion, connected to sentiment, affection, and all these things. But Vedana here, we should remember that Vedana is does not include this kind of connotation to this word. So Vedana is purely mental feeling that associate with all kinds of chitta when it arises. So Vedana is actually the mental taste of the experience, like how the mind experiences that object. Okay, so for greed-rooted consciousness, the mind usually, when greed arises, it either likes it very much because it's craving, right? So somanasa is possible, but domanasa is not possible, because when we want something, we cannot at the same time not want it or have aversion to it. Yeah. So domanasa does not associate with any kind of Lobhamūla citta. Sometimes we also want something, but just not very eagerly or very with a lot of mental pleasure, but just neutrally. So those kind of greed-rooted consciousness arise together with mental neutrality. Okay. So that's the second aspect of Lobhamūla citta. And the next one is ditthi, wrong view. So there are many kinds of ditthi. Then if you have sometime read the sutta of the 60 some kinds of, was it 62? Was it, oh yeah, do I remember well? Or 60 some kinds of wrong view in the suttas. There is what is it called? Brahmajala Sutta, I think it was. Anyway, I will look again and then I will tell you later. So all kinds of wrong view are listed in that sutta. But here, mostly we talk about the a general. Of course, all those kinds of wrong view that are mentioned in the suttas arise together with this Cetasika ditthi, right? But here, when it is arising with lobha, then it always arises with lobha. But here, what do we mean by with ditthi or without ditthi? With a brief and simple example, say when a person, when he is about to do some perform something or an action with greed. Let's say this person, then he was wanting to get a phone from the other. He was wanting to steal this something from another person, and he thinks that it's okay to do so, and there is nothing wrong about doing wrong. And if he thinks that way, and then he goes and perform this action, then it is greed with wrong view. And if this person, if he really wants, let's say in the same scenario, he really wants it and he really wants to steal the phone from this person, but then he understands that there are consequences when he do unwholesome deeds, there will be unwholesome karma. So, but the greed is stronger in this time. So at the end, he still did it, for example, in this case, but because he knows that doing this unwholesome deed is not good, so he does not have a wrong view. So this is greed without wrong view in this case. So greed can be, greed-rooted consciousness can arise with wrong view or without wrong view. Okay, this we already discussed it previously. Any questions about this point? All clear? Yeah? Okay, so let's continue. Then about unprompted or prompted, that's also easy to understand. When it is unprompted, that means that the person, while this Lobhamūla citta arised in him, he did not have a second thought. He was just, yes, I'm going to do this. So that those kind of citta, when it arises in that way, is called unprompted. So another way is, for example, he wasn't really thinking about he want that thing, but then maybe someone said, oh, that is really good, you should really get it, and like somebody encourages him, and then he goes, oh yeah, it's really nice, I should get it. Then that kind of greed-rooted consciousness is arised, prompted. So this is a different kind of situation. Those are the kinds that is prompted, and sometimes not necessarily prompted by another person, but also by oneself. It is also possible. So if the person, he was like a little bit hesitating, and then think a little bit, should I not? Well, okay, yeah, then that is also considered prompted. Okay, so those are the 4 aspects of greed-rooted consciousness. So with these 4 aspects, we have 8 kinds of Lobhamūla citta. The first 4 accompanied by mental pleasure, somanasa, associated with wrong view, unprompted is the first type of the Lobhamūla citta. So accompanied by mental pleasure associated with wrong view and unprompted. Then the second one is accompanied by mental pleasure associated with wrong view, but unprompted. Oh, sorry, unprompted, and this one, the second one, prompted. Okay, so now we have first type, second type, and the third type is also accompanied by mental pleasure, but this time not associated with wrong view and unprompted or prompted. So here we have 4 types of the Lobhamūla citta. And the next 4 is basically the same, but this time associated with mental neutrality. So also associated with wrong view, unprompted or prompted, dissociated from wrong view, unprompted or prompted. So altogether, there are 8 kinds of Lobhamūla citta. Until here, okay? Yes? All right. Okay, so just a little refreshing of the Pali words. Somanasa, Sahagata means accompanied, but just remember Somanasa, that's good enough. So Somanasa Sahagata, accompanied by mental pleasure, or Upeka, accompanied by mental neutrality, Upeka Sahagata. Then wrong view is called Ditti. So here Ditti Gata, Sampayuta, with, or Vipayuta, without, associated with or dissociated from. Then prompted is called unprompted is called asankarika, and prompted is called sasankarika. So unprompted and prompted. All right. So up to here, we have gone through the revision of the first group of Lobhamūla citta, all of them.